New York is synonym with change. No city in the world evolves at the same speed. The Big Apple has been my favorite place on earth for as long as I can remember. That first glimpse of the Manhattan skyline from the taxi coming from the airport has always been enough to make my heart skip a beat. Actually, I've always associated the very idea of happiness with walking New York's busy, noisy streets. This city gives me the impression of being a living organism, with yellow cabs filling its avenues and streets like blood fills the arteries in the human body. NYC has its own unique personality. It has several personalities, actually. It's chaotic, intimidating, and at the same time welcoming, stimulating, exuberant, and never, ever subdued. There is a reason they call this the city that never sleeps. Just like the blinding lights of Times Square, New York never switches off. Or does it? The New York I arrived to for a week-long stay in January has changed, almost beyond recognition and not for the better. It is my 8th visit to the city, and it's the first time I see it so quiet. Not even in 2002, just 6 months after 9/11, have I seen New York so low-spirited. I'm shocked to emerge from the subway into a semi-empty Times Square, or walk down a deserted Fifth Avenue on a Saturday afternoon. Granted, it is bitterly cold out, and that certainly doesn't help. But I find myself wondering time and time again, has COVID killed New York? Okay, these are just the impressions of a visitor. Things might have changed now, and locals likely have a completely different view. But it is clear to me that the city is reeling from the effects of the pandemic, which include a mass exodus following the first COVID wave, especially from affluent areas, and countless business closures. When I visit, restaurants are still empty and the tourist few. Add record levels of crime, with incidents up 60% from a year ago, and of homelessness, with the highest number of people living in the streets in nearly a century, and you've got yourself a pretty gloomy picture. For the first time, I experienced New York with something of a bitter taste in my mouth. But even in a difficult time, this is still an incredible place to be, and I'm determined to make the most of it. Just like the city itself, New York's skyline is ever-changing. Every time I come here, there seems to be a bunch of new, shiny towers crowding the already busy city landscape. New York has always been used as an open-air lab for what's new and hot in architecture, in a never-ending race to the sky that over the past century or so has given the world some of the most beautiful buildings ever built, from the Empire State Building to my favorite of them all, the Chrysler Building. The most recent additions to the New York skyline are the ultra-luxury, super tall and super slender residential towers lining the southern edge of Central Park and earning 57th Street the nickname of Billionaire's Row. They may be mostly empty, but these spectacular pencil towers are without a doubt pushing the envelope when it comes to engineering. Another new entry in the New York skyline is One Vanderbilt, an elegant skyscraper on 42nd Street that is home to one of the newest and most incredible attractions in the city, the Summit. With unrivaled and unblocked views of the Chrysler Building and the whole of Midtown, Summit is one of the highlights of my trip to New York. What I love the most about it is the mirror walls, which give me the impression of being floating in the sky above the city. But Summit has competition, not just from traditional observation decks like Top of the Rock or the Empire State Buildings, but also from the edge at Hudson Yards. I come up here at sunset. I have to break the cold for a good 2 hours, but I'm rewarded with the breathtaking spectacle of the city lights coming on. It is up here, as I look at the concrete jungle in awe, that I'm reminded of my undying love for New York. The Hudson Yards complex is testament to the city's ability to take a nondescript area and turn it into an attraction. Sitting on top of a storage yard for the Long Island Railroad trains, located between Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, Hudson Yards has become a major draw for visitors and locals alike, thanks in part to the Shed Arts Center and the stunning vessel. This freestanding structure of interconnected staircases has been nicknamed the shawarma. But being Italian, I immediately see it as a giant, upside-down panettone. Hudson Yards is connected to the High Line, one of the most successful urban renewal projects that the city has embarked upon in recent years. Walking down the High Line on a freezing Sunday morning, I'm struck by the ingenuity of those who thought of turning an abandoned elevated railway into a park, offering great views of the city. Near the southern end of the High Line, I visit Little Island, an artificial island park built on 132 so-called tulip pots of different heights. I gotta admit, I had very high expectations for Little Island, and I'm slightly underwhelmed. Then again, if you avoid visiting at the same time as I do, very early on a Sunday morning with minus 12 degrees outside, you're sure to have a much better experience of the place. One that doesn't remind you of a post-apocalyptic world in which you're the last man standing. A big part of my New York trip is to enjoy once again some of the classics. Those attractions the city is famous for, starting from its wonderful museums. During my stay, I visit the Metropolitan and the Museum of Modern Art. It's been years since I set foot in either, and I'm struck by the incredible pieces on display. At the Met, my personal favorites are without a doubt the Egyptian Temple of Dendur, located in a stunning room with monumental windows overlooking Central Park, and the impossibly realistic statue of Ugolino and his sons, by Jean-Baptiste Carpeaux. If you're into modern art, however, it is MoMA you have to go to. Here, I fall in love all over again with Picasso and with Andy Warhol's pop art. For the first time in 23 years, I also go back to Liberty Island, to get up close and personal with the most iconic of American monuments, the Statue of Liberty, the very symbol of the country. Taking a video of Manhattan getting smaller and smaller from the ferry nearly causes me to lose a hand to hypothermia, but the views are completely worth it. It may be cold out, but it is a glorious sunny day, and Miss Liberty looks more beautiful than ever. The spirit of open arms that the statue came to embody, and that America doesn't always live up to, is what I have in mind during my first ever visit to an almost entirely empty Ellis Island. The National Museum of Immigration is very informative, and I find it moving to read about the people, many of them Italians, who crossed the Atlantic in search of a better future. My trip to New York would not be complete without spending some time in Central Park. This immense, world-famous park is almost twice the size of Monaco, and it's the ideal place to take a break from the fast pace of the city. Central Park is so big that as soon as you move away from its edges and towards its core, the noises of the city disappear. As I explore its many trails and enjoy the atmosphere around the Bethesda fountain, I realized that actually I wouldn't even be able to see the city from much of Central Park if it wasn't winter and the trees weren't bare. One of my favorite things to do in New York is just walk down its long avenues and marvel at the views. Over the course of the week, I walk what feels like every single inch of Manhattan. But it's on my 5th day in town that I beat my own record, partly to make the most of the balmy 6 degrees outside, when I walked 12 kilometers as I explored the lower part of the island. From my hotel in Tribeca, I walked south towards the sobering 9/11 memorial. Because I first visited New York in 1999, when the Twin Towers were still standing, I clearly remember what this place looked like before the attacks. The vast opening with the memorial pools at its center is evocative of the void left behind by the many who lost their lives and by an event that has represented a turning point in the history of the world. I then reach a deserted Wall Street. It's a Wednesday morning, and there are only a couple of people in front of the New York Stock Exchange. This is absolutely insane and a far cry from the impossibly busy financial district I remember. Another reminder of how much COVID has transformed New York. To shake off the Walking Dead vibes I'm getting, I go to the Seaport District, right on the East River, with the idea of using it as a starting point to enjoy the rewarding views of the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges I can get from the water. And one more time, the New York Skyline does not disappoint. From the water, I continue my stroll in the Lower East Side. Historically one of the most densely populated areas in town, the Lower East Side is rapidly gentrifying, even though it still retains an authentic, somewhat grittier feel than the rest of Manhattan. This is also one of the busiest areas I spent time in during my week in New York, which is a welcome change in these COVID times. As my walk continues, I reach Washington Square Park, a popular meeting point for New Yorkers in the heart of the village. And from there, the Stonewall National Monument, the birthplace of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement, which began here with the riots of 1969 in response to yet another police raid against the local gay community. The village is quintessentially New York. From the Magnolia Bakery to the stunning brownstone buildings lining its leafy streets, this neighborhood is of the stuff movies and TV shows are made of. It is no coincidence that it's here that I find the buildings appeared in two of the most popular TV shows set in New York, Friends and Sex and the City. The last stop on my walk is Soho, one of the most elegant neighborhoods in New York. Famous for its beautiful cast iron buildings, its lofts, boutiques and art galleries, Soho is currently facing a new wave of gentrification that, according to many locals, threatens the very soul of the district. It's impossible not to share their worries. After all, this seems to be the fate of countless cities around the world, where wild gentrification and the construction of high-end housing pushes prices up and locals out. As the afternoon sunshine floods the spectacular streets of Soho, I find myself thinking about how different New York feels this time around. The same question keeps popping up in my mind. Has COVID changed New York forever? It might have. It's probably changed all of us. This is a difficult time for the city, and the pandemic has clearly laid bare many of its problems. Yet, I'm sure it will come back in no time in a new, even more awesome reincarnation. After all, it always does.